I'm going to bring up my presentation here while we transition this. I think the first hour or so of what I've been sitting in through with all of you, same thing, could kind of come into the term of things that you never knew you were going to have to deal with and listen to and be a part of when you became a coach. And I'm going to continue that with this conversation about money, the economy, and recruiting in the CUNYAC. And the reason that this is something that I think is important when we are talking to coaches, and just for those of you who don't know much about us or what we do, we work with close to now 700 individual coaching staffs and athletic departments around the country, helping them figure out what their recruiting message is, training them how to be effective, and really helping them understand what this generation of recruits is all about. So that being said, one of the things that we have seen a big spike in terms of interest, the trend lines of what their conversations have been with college prospects, is centered around money and the economy and the changes that we're seeing that are affecting decisions. And so what I wanted to do in talking with Kim prior to jumping on here tonight, this is a topic that isn't a lot of fun to talk about. It's not something that a lot of coaches are comfortable with even leading this discussion in, but it's important. And it's probably more important than ever because we're facing some things nationally that we won't get into because all of you watch the news, all of you are living life out in this economy. I want you to understand that there are some big shifts that are happening very quickly in the way that families are making a decision, how they're making that decision related to the value that they associate with the college that their son or their daughter is thinking about competing in. And I think that has direct implications for all of you. So what my goal here is, over the next just a little bit, and we'll leave some time at the end for questions, is to not come in and say, here's how you have to do it. Here's the simple plan. This will fix everything. What I want to share is what other coaches have been doing early on and seeing success in, what we feel from our feedback and the focus group testing that we do with student athletes, how that can be applied to this year's recruiting. And really the whole goal here is to simplify and speed up the process and to take away some of the roadblocks that some of you may be facing as you go out and recruit going into this year. So that's the goal for me as we get into this. Why are we talking about it? Well, if you've read the headlines, if you've read the news, there are things going on in our economy that are directly affecting families, and that affects their decision on where and how and who they should go compete for in college. And they're starting to make a financial decision more and more related to that. Now, they always have. Money has always been a factor, but I've been in this long enough now, going into close to 2 decades of working, and our staff working with college athletic departments. There was a time when mom and dad, if they really wanted to have their son or their daughter go and play at a certain college, get a certain type of education, the answer was easy. We'll just take some home equity loans out. Our house will pay for it, and no problem. We're okay with the college costs. Now we're entering a different phase, and we've been trending towards that for a long time. And what we've seen coming out of COVID, coming through the last year or so, with a lot of inflation, a lot of money pressures on families, we're seeing that accelerate. And that is affecting college athletics. It's affecting college coaches. It is affecting the conversation they have. And that's why I think it's an important conversation to have. Even at the CUNY level, about 4 weeks ago in the New York Times, there was a really interesting article on a CUNY student who was, the whole topic was they were going to have to go and have this difficult conversation with their academic advisor at at Queens, where they were going to pull out of school. And the term is now stopping out instead of dropping out, because they had to go into the job market. And the job market right now for young people is really strong. And so there is this pull. Do I take care of myself economically, or do I continue my athletic career, my college career? And that is something more so than ever we have seen be a real struggle and a real choice that's being made behind the scenes. And again, the reason I want to talk about this and give you some strategies is because this is something that a lot of families and a lot of student athletes don't bring up in front of you. Maybe they're embarrassed. Maybe they feel, like they don't want to share that part of what that conversation is behind the scenes. But if you as a coach can lead that conversation, there's two things that are going to happen. Either you're going to be able to go ahead and provide solutions to them and explain to them why a CUNY education, especially with the cost advantages that you have over some options educationally that they would have, why that's going to be the best choice. Or if it's just not going to happen, if economically it's not something that that family is prepared to move forward with, for you as a college coach, especially many of you are part-time, to be able to recognize that early on, stop recruiting that athlete athletically, still hope he goes to the CUNY school, but stop recruiting them athletically and move on to the next one. That is going to be the difference between having a mediocre program and having a very strong program, because you're getting the right kind of athletes that are there, that are in this for the right reason in terms of the direction that they want to take in their life and what they're valuing in terms of the education for that. So again, we don't need a lot of stats, but just to give you a sense of what families are talking about and what we hear now, and the coaches that we work with as they report back to the conversations going on behind the scenes. College costs going into this year up between 3 and 8%. We have loan costs going up, so it's getting harder. If I do need to borrow, that's going to get harder and harder to do, even if we go through college loan process, that those loans are going to go up. And then you get to the basics, the staples like the food costs that are increasing, fuel costs that are increasing, and an overall enrollment drop across colleges nationwide approaching 7-8% now going into this year, means that there are fewer college prospects to draw from. And those draws, the ones that are interested, the ones that are in the conversation, have money very much top of mind, whereas before they didn't always have that. And again, going back to the student that we read about in the New York Times, the draw economically for these younger students and student athletes is strong. They can babysit for close to, now in the New York City area, $50 an hour. They can go to Starbucks and be a barista for $25 an hour. Weighing that versus the investment of time and money that I'm going to put into my college education, that's the pull. And so again, this is another one of those things that as a college coach, never really got into it to have these conversations, but this is why it's an important conversation, because this is all the stuff we're starting to hear about now in the last 4 to 8 months, that are real conversations that are happening, that if you drive the process and if you control and take a lead in that conversation, it's going to work out much better for you as a coach developing and building your program than if you just let it happen behind the scenes and you're not involved in that conversation. So the statement that I'm starting off with here is pretty self-explanatory, that you have to be the one to lead this money conversation with your prospects. You have to do it early in the process. Yes, you are the one who has to do it. And I realize, by the way, that financial aid, that office, the admissions office, has a specific role and in many ways a lead role in that conversation as well. And they are the ones that ultimately will determine what that athlete is going to get in most cases. But what I want you to do is to start the conversation. Even though you may not be involved in the back end decisions about exactly what they're going to pay for school, you have the ability to have the conversation with them. And when a coach does that, you're not being pushy, you're not bringing up something uncomfortable. What you're doing is you're opening yourself up to the conversation so that that family, that student athlete who has the pressures, who maybe hears a parent talking about the difficulties of being able to pay for school, even at the affordable level that many CUNY schools are at, if they're able to talk to you, that means they're going to confide in you. They're going to trust your judgment more than they will a coach who never brings it up that they don't have that conversation with. So what we're finding is that student athletes are really wanting to have this conversation, but they're not able to do it because they don't feel like it's something they can bring up, or if they do bring it up, they don't go into detail about it. So if you are the one leading the conversation, that's going to be better for you. And you have to do it early in the process. Why? Well, first of all, I need to know as a coach, there's a practical side of me. If I'm building a program and running a team at a CUNY school, I need athletes that are bought into the educational side, that choice in life that they're going to go and devote time and resources into their education and into their athletic career. I need to know that earlier rather than later. If you want to know the number one thing that kills programs and in many respects kills coaching careers, it's when coaches recruit, they hope everything's great, seems like the athlete's interested, but they never ask these tough questions. And then March, April, May rolls around, they start getting all the no's. They don't have time to fill up their roster with good athletes beyond that because they were hoping that these others would come through. And that's what hurts and really dampens a coaching career, because you got to coach the kids that you recruit. I need to find out as a program builder early on who's in, who's out, who is realistically considering this. And to have this conversation early in the process helps me as a coach do that. So just to keep in mind, this is why I think it's so important. And the coaches that have jumped over and made this transition to these early conversations that they lead are the ones that are doing the best. So how do you do that? And again, we're going to try to boil this down very quickly in a short time, being sensitive to all the time that you're devoting already into this this evening. If there's follow-up questions, we can talk about those at the end. I'll give all my contact information too. I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions that any of you would have individually. The biggest thing is acknowledging the cost of a college education and what they may be temporarily giving up in terms of the real world and the work opportunities to be a part of it. But you have to acknowledge the cost, that this is an investment. Earlier you do that, it's going to mean a better outcome, better results for you, like we just talked about. I also think there's a really important aspect of this, that you as a coach, or their potential college coach, acknowledge the fact that, hey, I understand this is a tough decision. I understand that college is expensive. Once you do that, you're putting yourself on their level. You're acknowledging that what they're thinking or stressing about isn't crazy. It's not something that they shouldn't be focused on. All you're saying is that I understand what you're going through. I understand. I may be relating it back to something that you went through as an athlete when you had to make that choice as well. This conversation, by the way, I'm really going to encourage you to say that it has to happen with the prospects, as well as any parent and other decision makers in that family. Sometimes it's not a parent. It might be an older sibling, a cousin, somebody that has gone through the college process. They feel like they're going to help guide that student athlete through this process. You have to have this conversation with not only the prospect, but the adults in their life that may be affecting the conversation and the decision behind the scenes. Coaches who do this, whether it's related to money or just the overall decision, quickly find out that their prospects are hearing from a lot of different people behind the scenes, and I need you as a coach involved in that conversation and to be an equal in that conversation. If you don't reach out and talk with the parent or the other adult, it's not going to happen. Very rarely do they come to you and acknowledge and talk about what it is that they're talking about behind the scenes. Assessing the realities is also a part of this. And what do I mean by that? You have to ask questions and really get inside the head when it comes to economics and where that is leading them and how that's going to factor into their decision. Some very simple questions that can open up the conversation that surprisingly most coaches never talk about. They never get into this with their student athlete prospects. What's your plan? Especially if they're a first generation student athlete, which I know CUNY student athletes, a lot of times that's the case. What is your plan when it comes to playing basketball at this level? What envisioning your college athletic career? Educationally, what are your goals? Really to dig in and find out what they're thinking and what they're picturing is important, because they need to hear you listen to it, accept it, give some validation to it, and that's going to help the conversation continue to build and to grow. Um, Specifically with the economy, because it is such a top line topic now with most families behind the scene, is look, how's everything with the economy changed about what you're picturing for college, for your athletic career? Um, to go start to go inside with that question about what are you feeling and how has this picture changed, that's going to be important, because again, your job as a recruiter is to draw out these conversations, draw out the information, so that based on the answers you can make an assessment of where you need to go next. um, do not ask what's your budget for college, because the second you ask that, what they're seeing now is that, okay, now we're in negotiations, now you're trying to sell me and you're trying to get me for as little as possible. That's what the athletes say they feel when that questions get asked. So try not to ask that question, because I think it erects a barrier. um, how much are you willing to spend if you to come here, if we can work with it, how much is in your budget? Very, very hard to ask that question. That's not the time for it right now. What we're trying to get is an understanding of where their attitudes are and what the conversation has been behind the scenes, without getting into these specifics just yet, as you're assessing the realities moving forward. I also think related to this is where you start making your case, and yeah, this is a little bit of selling now that needs to happen, because they're looking, should I jump in? Should I take this? And not only are you the right school, but is this the right life choice for me? I need you to make that case. And I say you because just like I want you to lead the conversation about money, when in reality you may have deferred that to financial aid or admissions before, you're the coach. And I mean, as a student athlete, you looked at your coach as you were going through the college choice process. They weren't just your coach, they were your counselor, they were admissions, financial aid, at least you wanted them to be. That's the role that you have that is so unique and precious. Use that to help further the recruiting process quickly. So make your case. Why should they choose you? And if they're looking at other CUNY schools, why your program should be the choice? Why is that? Why should you be their coach? I need you to sell me on that, coach. That's going to be going into the overall value I associate with, if I'm going to bypass some great jobs in this job market, especially in your area, in and around New York City. If I'm bypassing those and I'm choosing the education and supplementing that with the college sports experience, why should I choose you? Why your program? Why you as the coach? They are looking for those. I need you to not wait for them to ask. Jump in and explain to them. Be bold and say, here's why it should be me. They're looking for that. They respond favorably to it. And it helps to build your brand as a destination school and a coach. Other questions that you can ask that are related to both financial situations, their future, what is it that they're trying to do athletically, all these things. I need you to do them to make your case and to state without being asked, here's why it should be us. The goal of this is that I get the most I can for the least I can invest, in a sense. If I'm the athlete, I want the best value possible for if I'm going to spend time and money there. It's all about value in this situation, in this economy right now. Parents are looking for that. Athletes are looking for definition on that. That's one thing that you have to sell, is making the case of why you're the best value. And again, your job is to make the case. They get to decide if that is the best value for them, from a location, from a total cost standpoint, what their role in the team is. Do you have their major? All that goes into that value proposition that then you're able to, again, make the case. They're the ones that get to decide, but your job is to make the case. And one of the things we're seeing coaches still struggling with is going in and saying, here's why it should be us, because in your mind, you may know that there are less expensive options. There are JC options within the CUNY that might be more economically advantageous to them. I need you to not be the one that's making that final decision. I need you to be the one that makes the case. Here's why this is the best value. Here's why you should invest in this. Spend the money with us in our program. If you want that athlete, that's one thing that a lot of families are going to be looking for when it comes to the program that they choose. This is a little bit like when we talk about value. If you had two tennis shoes, I mean, these are both workable tennis shoes that you can buy. One you could get for $24.99. The other is $179.99. You may notice the one on the right is a Nike. Why do people, even in this economy, choose the $179 shoe versus the $24 shoe, even when money is tight? The reason is because we've all grown up with Nike ads, the branding, the story that they told, the cost justification. Here's why you should go with our brand. The one on the left, by the way, that's $24 is at Walmart. Structurally, fit, everything, probably very similar to Nike. But we like Nike because, first of all, as athletes, we're going to say, well, that's a better brand than Walmart. I don't want to be a program that is outfitting our student athletes in Walmart gear. I want the Nike gear. Do they get the job done the same way? Yes, but we have associated more value with Nike. We're willing to pay more. The reason I bring this up, this is exactly the type of thing that you have to do in a very short amount of time with your prospects, because they're looking to find out, should I pay for the more expensive shoe? It's funny, in college, when it comes to education and what I should pay, what do they want? It's always about who's going to give me the most. How do I get out of this with the least amount of money spent? So they're almost geared towards going to that less expensive side. I need you to pull them back and say, here's why it should be me, our program, this school, this campus, our program. That's what Nike has done. You don't have a multi-billion-dollar ad budget and years to do this, to build that brand. You have to do it quickly. The good news is that they will respond to that, but you have to be the one to lead the conversation. Otherwise, it's always going to be the deferment is going to be, I'm going to defer to the least expensive, or I'm going to defer out of college and I'm going to go take the $50 an hour babysitting gig that I just saw online or my app, and that's going to be, the great money at 18. So that's the choice that you're making as a coach is, am I going to brand myself or am I going to let them defer to the least expensive option? And of course, you probably know which one I'm going to encourage you to do. Which gets into this next thing is that if you're selling yourself, and we're talking about money, I need you to sell it with passion. I want you to imagine that the job you're in right now, whether you're head coach, assistant, part-time, full-time, whatever it is, take the attitude that this is going to be your job for the next 10 years. You're going to be in this role at that school for the next decade. Work at it and take the approach that I'm building something for the long term. If you do, just making that little mental switch when it comes to selling yourself and being that being that advocate and that brand agent, that's something that really helps if you take that long-term view of it. And please do that, because that helps with everything that we've been talking about. And by the way, this is recruiting. You're going to still lose a lot of kids. You're going to lose more than you get to your school. So expect the objections. Don't let it be a surprise. You know what the typical objections you get at your school. It could be a facility. It could be location. It could be you don't have the one major that everybody wants. Whatever it is, expect objections, but be ready to answer them. Come in with the answers already prepared. Maybe even don't even let the objection happen or the question happen. Lead with the explanation of, hey, you might hear this and this about our school or about our facility. Here's the truth. Here's what you should think about it. That's going in and making sure that we're not having to deal with an objection. You bring it up first and sell it. And frankly, the statement I think you would want to go with, and that I encourage you to sort of implement into, is that you'd be crazy not to compete anywhere else but here. And this is why. And then come up with that why, because it's going to be different, obviously, for every coach at every school and every program. But take the attitude that this is, you run the best program in the CUNY, in the state of New York, in the region. And here's why. And here's why it should be you as a coach. You'd be shocked that most coaches don't do this. Even at the high level Division I, there is this tendency to say, you know what, I can't say that about myself. I got to be humble. Don't want to say anything negative about anybody else, and I don't want you to either. But your athletes, if they're going to spend money and time and make the life choice to come and compete for you, I want to compete for the coach that says, no, this is where, and I should be the person, and here's why. Give us that reason. That's going to do so much to help the value assessment that they're making along the way. Um, and explain also, look, we're not right for everybody. I'm not the right coach for everybody. Here's the wrong type of athlete that would want to come, that could be tempted to come here. I don't want that. I want this. Draw a comparison and explain to them, here's why I want you. Because when you do that, it gives them permission to say, yeah, coach, I want you too. Without that, I wait. And coaches everywhere who don't want to take that final thing, they would say, I don't want to pressure the athlete by saying, I want them, or they're ready to make a decision. You're missing out, because they need that door open for them to then respond with the same thing. Yeah, coach, I want to be there too. So what do we need to do next? Last thing I'll say on this topic is, don't be afraid to walk away. In other words, if an athlete is taking too long, if they're asking questions that just don't seem like they're headed in your direction, if it's obvious that financially they can't do it, they don't want to invest in it, you're having to pull them too hard, don't be afraid to walk away. Because first of all, it's going to save you a lot of time and headaches. Second of all, that's a position of strength. When you say no thank you to an athlete, or if they're just taking too long, when you walk away, that projects strength out to the rest of that community. So if you coach basketball and you go to AAU tournaments, travel ball club, all that, the number one thing to build when it comes to your brand among those other club coaches, AAU coaches that might be defining your program a certain way to a student athlete that's playing for them, is when you walk away and show strength, that we're okay with not recruiting that athlete who took too long. The next round of athletes that come around through that program get the message that you aren't going to wait around. And that's incredibly important. So for your own sanity and for your own program development, don't be afraid to walk away from an athlete. Because again, their choice is coming down to value. And if the sooner I know what they're valuing, if it's the shoe on the left or the shoe on the right, I then know what to do next as a recruiter, as a program builder, as the coach that's leading that development. Without asking those questions that I just went through, I don't know what to do, and I can't associate value, and that makes everything much, much harder. What is the payoff? If I'm going to come to your school coach, start talking to me as early as possible and talk to my parents about why this is a good investment. What is the payoff for me in coming to your school, being a student athlete, being a student? Two more things as we start to wrap up. Give me about 5 or 10 more minutes, because I want to talk to two things that if you do what I just described, two things happen. And sometimes these work hand in hand, that you can't have one without the other. The whole reason we want to have this conversation about money and affordability and open up that conversation is because it creates momentum, and momentum in the recruiting process is critical. And I want you to measure it just like you would in a game. You get those momentum shifts, those swings, and sometimes you want to stop it. If the opposing team is on a run, you call timeout, calm everything down, reset everything. And sometimes, again, if you're a basketball coach, you're on a 14-point run. You don't want it to end because you've got that momentum now. Same thing happens in recruiting, and I want you to start reading it more intelligently as a college coach. That prospects are telling us when they start to lose interest in a program, and it's pretty quickly. They're making some quick assessments on who's right for them, who's wrong for them. And the reason, again, I want you to talk about money early on is I need to know why I should be interested and why you're the one. And you see, as I went through that description of the money conversation, yeah, a lot of it had to do with money, but it flows into other reasons. It flows into the motivation as to why are they even looking at you as an option. And so I want you to build this momentum, understand that you don't have a lot of time to get their attention. They'll give you some initially, But if that conversation doesn't get momentum, they start to lose interest. So what I'm saying is, what you're doing initially in that conversation that you have with them early on and with their parents early on helps get that momentum going, and we want to make sure that that happens. Um, that we talk about involvement and what it is that they are that they're trying to figure out. Um, it's it's everything. So your judge as a recruit, I'm sorry, as a recruiter, is to try to figure out who's involved in that conversation. Um, what is it that I need to do to connect with that individual, that person, and then move forward and do that. Um, it's really important for you as a coach to outline the plan as early as possible of what you see for them as a student athlete in your program. Now, a lot of times you don't know exactly what the plan is. You can't promise them a starting position, and they don't need that. But for that type of skill set, for that position, here's how we work that in our offense, or here's the type of the student athlete that I like to have on my team. And here's the plan for you. If you were to come here, I could see this being like what your freshman year would look like. If you want to understand or get a prospect interested in you that maybe even on paper you have no business talking to, they're a couple of levels above you. They have options that are bigger than what your school could present to them. Outlining and talking about the individual plan that you see for them is one of the key ways to keep their interest early on. And part of this, you look at momentum. Part of it has to build quickly, because point number one, they lose interest very quickly. But if you can start to make it personal to them, that's what keeps them involved. They get more and more interested, and all of a sudden you're up there with the programs that maybe on paper you shouldn't be competing with. Um, Part of this also, and if you followed us or you read any of our stuff that we put out, or if you've done any work with us, because we've been to a couple of campuses in the CUNY system over the years, and we've done training with your athletic department, we are big on consistent communication. That doesn't mean text messaging all the time, doesn't mean a phone call has to happen, but it means written communication that tells the story of your program, that explains the why behind why they should want to compete there, spend money there, start explaining the value. That's best done, the athletes tell us, in written form. By written form, that is email or letters. That's the best way to tell a story. When you're talking to them, when it's only on social media, or if you're trying to text them, those things fall way shorter than stuff that is written to them where they can read it over and over again. They can pass it to their parents, or maybe the parents are the ones doing the reading and they're talking to it about their student athletes. It is such an important key. And then when you show consistency, that creates and maintains that momentum over over coaches that you might be competing with who just don't know how to do it, or they don't know that they should be doing it. This is an easy way to put yourself out in front through consistency and that written story. And as I've been saying, not only with the money talk, but everything else related to recruiting, please involve the parents as early as possible. Again, if you want momentum to happen, that's one key thing that we've seen be the driver. When it's only the prospect involved and you've avoided talking to the parents, boy, it's an all or nothing proposition. Sometimes they stay interested, and sometimes they drop off for weeks at a time or months at a time. You've experienced that. When you're talking to both parties, parents involved with the process as well as the prospect, the parents sometimes take over and they'll drive it. And to be able to jump in and talk to a parent that you've had a relationship with, hey, haven't heard from Sam in a little bit. What's going on with her? Everything good? They'll jump in and answer you, whereas their daughter may not answer you. So involve the parents as early as possible, because it's a key driver in keeping that momentum possible. When we ask this, again, why should you involve the parents? We've asked before through our focus group surveys they do with literally thousands of athletes every year that have just been recruited. Now they're on a college campus that we work with. We've asked them through the whole process, what did your parents help you with in terms of the whole process? And what we're really trying to figure out or measure is, are parents still involved with recruiting behind the scenes? Because sometimes it's not talked about a lot with college athletes and college prospects and their parents. Well, in the things that are important, um, the most important, the highest drivers in that category, things like they told me their opinion of the school. They helped me narrow down my choices. They filled out all the forms for me. I mean, you see the graph. I don't need to read it line by line. You see that graph, how important it is that their parents are involved in the discussion. And even if they're saying, hey, it's, it's your decision as a student, it's your life, you have to, choose the place that's best for you. The athletes are listening to their parents, and more than 9 out of 10 times they take the direction that the parent gives. So I'm just going to let you know that even though it may not get talked a lot about behind the scenes with you, that's going on at home right now. Parents and their athletes are talking about how they're going to make this decision, where they should go visit, who they should seriously consider. And if they'd be honest with you and say, hey, coach, you're number 8 on the list, to be honest, that'd be one thing we could work with that. But they don't. They make you try to discover it. So I need you to do it. And one of the great ways to do that is through the parent conversation. The last thing I'm going to throw into this conversation, then we'll open up for any questions that are out there. It is so important, especially related to the money in the economy and the fact that decisions are being made quicker now. I need you to try to be first in this process. I need you to try to be the first one, the first coach, even though there's a lot of CUNY coaches hearing the same thing. I need you to be first in doing a couple of things with the recruiting process. When you're first to offer a visit on campus, first to express interest, first to talk about the plan, first to make an offer, whatever that first is, it beats a later option, a later coach, more than 9 out of 10 times. We're measuring the class of 2021 and starting to measure the incoming class of 2022. First beats last. In other words, they're looking to make decisions earlier. They're looking to have these conversations earlier, and they're waiting for coaches. And by and large, coaches around the country aren't meeting that need. So be the coach that's first that meets that need. It gives you maximum control because, again, if you're first, you're setting the tempo. What other place in athletics would you not want to be first? So kind of apply that to recruiting. It gives you maximum control. You're the one setting the tone. You're the one setting the standards that other coaches have to keep up with. And let's take the money conversation. If you've had an in-depth conversation, if you've opened the door and let them talk to you, and then the 3 other coaches that are contacting them don't offer that, you know what I do as a student athlete? And they tell us they do this. I start to compare and wonder, why aren't other coaches doing the same thing? Well, this coach offered me a visit to campus. They've expressed interest. Why haven't the other 3? That's what they're measuring, and they're doing it very quickly because, again, I need to make decisions fast if I'm a prospect, if I'm a parent. We need to know these things sooner. We got to know how much it's going to cost now. The days of waiting until April, May to make my final college decision as a prospect, that went out the door 25, 30 years ago. It's now happening earlier, especially in this economy. Doing this first gives you maximum control, and that's what I'm interested in you having. And all these things, all these things are, I think, are difficult or a challenge in some respects for a coach to adopt and do. If you do it, the end result that we hear happening is that it actually gives you more time to coach, which that's why you got into this. Not for all the legal stuff, even though it was brilliantly outlined. That's not why you got into coaching. Something you have to do as a coach in college. Recruiting isn't the reason you got into coaching, but it's something you have to do if you're going to build a good program. If you do this part of your life the way I've described it, it's going to give you more time to just be a coach. And I think that's important. So again, assess the changes that you need to make with all of this. Ruthlessly edit the way that you have done it in the past. And also with your list, if kids aren't responding, if they're not following the tone and the plan or the track that you see kids that normally end up in your program following, take them off the list, edit them out. That's okay. The earlier you do that, you can then replace them with other prospects. The later you wait, it gets harder. So please ruthlessly edit. Do everything sooner. This is, again, when it relates to asking, when it relates to the money conversation, do things sooner rather than later. That's one important thing going into 2023. It's doing the important things that we talked about earlier. That's just a big part of what you're going to be facing, and I think what gets the best response going into this year. So that was a lot to throw at you. I tried to be conscious of my time because I know we're already running a little bit over. All those are the different ways to contact myself. We have a good sized organization that works with coaches, um, every day, all day. And so whether it's coming in to train, whether it's working individually, or just, that's my cell number. You can text me, you can email me. Happy to answer questions after this, but I think it looks like we got a few that are coming in as well. So I'll I don't know if Kim, do you want me to handle these, or how do we want to do this?
They may just be sending them over to you because I don't see any. So if you have any questions, you guys can unmute yourself, or if you have any in the chat, feel free to address them.
Okay. So I'll read one. It says, given recent developments with NCAA governance, it's delegating greater responsibility to campuses and conference offices in regards to oversight and monitoring. Oh, you know what? This might be from...
Yeah, Dan, that was in relation to the prior question. I didn't want to put it in the chat while you were presenting, but I did want to get back to the questions previously. So,
okay. Well, so anybody that has a question, you can open up your mic and ask. And I know, again, we threw a lot at you. If you want to do it privately, those are all the ways to contact me, because I know we're getting later in the evening as well.
This is Courtney from York College. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Courtney.
Hi. I like what you just presented. In my process, just to add to what you're saying, I try to sell the majors, the whatever their the academic portion of it, the athletic program, and then myself.
Right.
All right. So that's the process I take with my recruits. In selling myself and what's the best fit for them and how I will develop them and make sure that they graduate on time, to the best of my abilities and to the best of the department capabilities.
Yeah. So based on that, so it was academics, and then what was the second one? The program?
And then it was the athletic department.
Right. So the department and then you. All important. I would, if you're throwing that out to say, for my opinion, I would flip that around. I would actually just completely invert it, because here's why. We've never done research and done focus group testing with the kid and say, you know what, they had my major, athletic department was well funded, the facilities were nice. And I went there even though I really didn't like the coach. That doesn't get made. What we have heard is I connected with the coach. I know they wanted me. They've got my major, department seems fine, so that's why I'm here. It's going to start and stop with you. And plus, if I wanted to know anything about your majors, I have one of these. I'm going to just look up anything I want about your college, my major, and I'm going to find that information pretty easily. What I can't find information on is who are you and why do you like me and what is my role on your team. Everything else I'll fill in the blanks on and I'll sort of fill from there. I have to know about you, though, and that's really the thing. Look, I don't think there's a bad academic institution within CUNY. To that end, also, all of you are very similar type campuses, similar majors. Everything is similar. So as a family, whether it's me as a parent of college athletes or it's a college athlete prospect, I know I'm going to get my degree somewhere. Okay, I've checked that box. I want to know, where do I fit in as an athlete? And so a lot of you, I want you to put yourself back in your 17-year-old brain. What was important to you then? I'll figure out the academics later, but I really want to go someplace that I'm wanted. And we can all agree that as adults, that's not necessarily the best way to make the decision, but they're making their decision that way. And when it comes to value, do I want to pay a little more to go to this school instead of going to a junior college or entering the job market, which right now is very healthy for young kids with a high school education. If I have a coach who wants me and who's going to build out something and I can continue my athletic career and I bought into that, the other thing will fall, all the other things will fall into place. So I would take what you just described and I would just flip it completely around. And look, with that idea or with anything that I presented today or anything you would go to the website and read, because we have about 1,000+ research articles on the way coaches are recruiting more effectively, try it. Do an A/B test. So try flipping it around like I just described. Does that get a better response? Did things, did that momentum get created better than the way I was doing it? And if the answer is no, then go back to the way you were doing it. But the reason I suggest that is I think you're going to find they're going to respond much more effectively and much more deeply to you telling about yourself and why they should come compete for you and why you want them there at the school. Because whenever we measure student athlete, the reasons that they committed to a place, what was the most important thing they were looking for in a campus visit that they were looking for throughout the process, one of the top two things is always, did I get a feeling the coach wanted me? So I would start with that because it's such an effective way to build that momentum and to begin to tell your story. Other questions?
Dan, what about the role of the student athletes? How critical is that in making connections with the recruits and prospects?
So the student athletes on an existing college campus, the existing student athletes?
Yes.
So tomorrow I lead for one of our clients, which is a Division I women's volleyball program. We're leading a redesign of their campus visit based on focus group surveys that we just did with their incoming freshmen and sophomores. When we ask, and the reason I'm bringing them up is they are very typical, they compare and they've come back with the same results as most student athletes, most programs do at the college level. We ask them as a percentage of time, if you were a prospect, how much time, what percentage of time on a campus, if you're going to go visit a campus, whether that's for 3 hours or overnight or whatever the time span is, you take that span of time, what percentage of that time would you just want to go with some of the freshmen and hang out and be with them as a way of determining whether or not that was the right fit, if that was the right place or not? When we ask that question, we hand it over to the student athletes to decide. What those student athletes say they wanted as a prospect, and you can maybe think of this answer on your own in your head, how you'd answer it as a student. The national average is 63% of the time they want to just go hang out. In other words, for 63% of the visit, they want to just go hang out with some of the freshmen to get a feel for, is this the place for me? Do they want me? Is this a comfortable feel? This particular Division I program out west, they ranked a little higher. They wanted 72% of the time. So we're going to help their coaches build out a visit that incorporates 72% of the time, just having some of the freshmen on the team host some of those prospects that are visiting. I use as an example to answer the question, your student athletes are the key to effective recruiting. Now, I know sometimes, but they have the class schedule, they have this going on, hard to get time away. I get that. I'm going to work as hard as I can for a coach to carve out as much time as close to that 60%. I'll even negotiate with all of you 50% of the time. Can you make it a 50-50 split? 50% of the time with your prospects, because the more time you give them with your current team, the younger kids on your team, not the juniors and seniors, but the freshmen ideally, some sophomores sprinkled in, that's fine, to go hang out, go back to the dorms, go grab something to eat, whatever it is that they can just experience regular life and get a feel for, does this team like me and want me? Do I like them? So critical. Again, go back to your 17-year-old self. How important was it to feel connected with the team? We forget that as adults. We go back to, well, look, here's the academic rankings, here's this great location, here's the internships we offer. I know, coach, I already looked that up on this. I got one of these. I know all that. I want to know, do you want me as a coach? And does the team want me? And do I like them? So I think to answer the question, it's critical that you carve out time Because again, if I, as a parent now, looking and I hear my son, my daughter talk about, well, these three schools programs were okay, but this one really connected with the coach, and I really connected with the team, and they wanted me, and I get a sense of what life is going to be like, and man, I just want to be there with them. Do you know what? I, as a parent, if I'm on the fence about the cost of that, or if I'm the student athlete and I'm responsible solely because I'm a first generation college student and my parents can't afford it, I have to make this decision. That's going to affect my decision in a positive way to come to your program because I want to be wanted. That's important to me at 17, 18 years old. And as I get older, things will change and morph, and I got to have value in the degree and all that. But when I'm making this initial decision, that's really important. So I would spend, if you're going to ask me, I'm going to say 63, 64% of the time, carve it out to where they are doing nothing but going off with some of your freshmen, whether that's to class, back to the dorms, get something to eat. They want to walk around and show them stuff, fine. I want them spending time with that team because I know if that happens, I, as the coach, are going to be much more successful with recruiting for sure. And it's happened across the board. Every experiment we've done, every division level, every setting, that's what works the best.
Great, thank you.
Great question. And again, if there's any others, feel free to reach out to me. There's my email address at the top, cell phone number, different ways to contact us. A lot of free resources that coaches from all over the country use at the website. So access that. We're here to help. And I really, Kim, thank you for having me be a part of this. I got to go to a CUNY kickoff session, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago now. So hopefully you can get back to some point having them live because that was a great event to be a part of, but really appreciate the chance just to share some of this. And I really hope it helps. And again, completely open to other conversations or anything that anybody would want to have as a follow-up if you have questions.